If you've ever trusted someone and been betrayed, or if you're crazy about stories where justice is the first lesson, like, subscribe and get ready. Because what happened next is not just revenge, but justice. I was still wearing my funeral dress when they cornered me at the cemetery. Richard had been in the ground for less than 10 minutes. I could still see the workers with their shovels waiting at a respectful distance, ready to fill in the grave of the man I'd loved for 8 years. We need to talk about Dad's assets. David, Richard's eldest son, blocked my path to the car. His sister Michelle flanked my other side like they'd rehearsed it. Now? My voice cracked. Your father just... The estate, the business, the house, everything goes to us. Michelle's tone was ice. You need to understand that. I stared at them, grief and shock colliding in my chest. What are you talking about? Come on, David sneered. You knew this was temporary. Dad was 72 when you married him. You're what, 45? We're not stupid. You trapped an elderly man, but it's over now. I loved your father. Our lawyer will be in touch, Michelle interrupted. Don't get too comfortable in our mother's house. They walked away, leaving me shaking beside my husband's fresh grave. Through my tears, I remembered something Richard had said just a month before the heart attack took him. He'd been updating some papers in his study, and when I'd asked if everything was okay, he'd smiled that mysterious smile of his. Don't worry, sweetheart. I've handled everything. 1 week later, the lawyer's letters arrived. Pages and pages of legal threats demanding immediate transfer of the estate. David and Michelle's attorney painted a picture of a predatory younger woman who'd manipulated a man in cognitive decline. They claimed Richard had early onset dementia, that the marriage wasn't valid, that I'd isolated him from his children. It was all lies. Richard had been sharp as a knife until the day he died. And his children? They barely visited, except when they needed money, but the letters kept coming. Then they started showing up at the house. That's Mom's antique table, Michelle announced, walking into my living room uninvited. We're taking it. This artwork was a family heirloom, David added, literally removing a painting from the wall. I was too numb, too exhausted from grief to fight. Richard's old friends stopped calling, probably believing the story that I'd been some kind of con artist. The business accounts were frozen pending legal review. I couldn't access anything. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had nothing. Maybe Richard's love hadn't been enough to protect me from the children, who saw me as nothing but a thief. The breaking point came when David threatened to get the marriage annulled posthumously, claiming his father hadn't been mentally competent. That's when I finally called Margaret Chun, the attorney Richard had insisted I keep on retainer. At the time, I thought it was just Richard being overprotective. Now I understood. Margaret's downtown office was all glass and mahogany. She smiled when I walked in like she'd been expecting me. I think maybe I should just give them what they want, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't fight this. They're his children. Margaret's smile widened. Richard told me you'd say exactly that. That's why he was so thorough. She opened a thick folder and my life changed. Your husband created an ironclad will 7 years ago, 1 year after you married. Attached are mental capacity evaluations from 3 independent doctors, all confirming he was of sound mind. She slid the documents across her desk. But the real gift is this. She turned her laptop toward me and pressed play. Richard's face filled the screen. My Richard, healthy and vibrant, recorded 6 months ago. If you're watching this, sweetheart, it means I'm gone and my children are showing their true colors. His voice made my heart break all over again. When their mother died, they fought over her jewelry before her body was cold. They've called me for money at least once a month for 15 years. They've insulted you at every holiday. And they've made it very clear they're just waiting for me to die. Tears streamed down my face as he continued. The business was failing when you came into my life. You turned it around as CFO. The estate has tripled in value because of your financial planning. David and Michelle get $50,000 each, which is more than generous considering the trust funds they already blew through. Everything else is yours. You earned it. You loved me when I had nothing left to prove. And if they contest this will, they get exactly $1 each. Margaret stopped the video. He also documented every text message, every voicemail, every demand for money, every insult they threw at you, every time they missed a birthday or holiday but showed up asking for a loan. I couldn't speak. There's more, Margaret continued. The will contains a contest clause. If they challenge it, their $50,000 gets reduced to $1, and Richard authorized me to publicly release all those documented conversations. The texts where David called you a gold digger, the emails where Michelle joked about waiting for the old man to croak. The formal reading of the will happened in the same office 3 days later. David and Michelle arrived in expensive clothes, confident and smirking. Their faces when Margaret read the actual provisions were almost worth the hell they put me through. This is fraud. David slammed his hand on the table. She manipulated him. He wasn't in his right mind. Margaret calmly pressed play on Richard's video. My husband's voice filled the room, naming specific incidents. The time David asked for $50,000 for a business investment that turned out to be a gambling debt. The Christmas Michelle brought her new boyfriend but not a single gift for her father. The cancer scare 3 years ago when neither of them visited him in the hospital, but I held his hand through every chemotherapy session. Michelle started crying. Dad really hated us? For the first time since the funeral, I felt something other than grief or fear. I felt clarity. He didn't hate you, I said quietly. He was just done being used. He loved you. He left you each more than most people see in years. But he didn't owe you his life's work. That belonged to the person who actually built it with him, me. They left without another word. No more threats. No more lawyers. Just the sound of the door closing on their inheritance dreams. 6 months later, I stood at Richard's grave with fresh flowers. The business was thriving. I donated 30% of the estate to charities Richard had cared about. And I'd finally stopped looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack. Thank you for believing in me, I whispered to the headstone. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else just saw a stereotype. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and I could almost hear his voice. I didn't protect you, sweetheart. I just made sure the truth couldn't be buried. As I walked back to our car, the one we picked out together, I realized something Richard had known all along. Love isn't about blood. It's about who stays when there's nothing to gain. It's about who builds rather than just inherits. It's about partnership, not parasites. David and Michelle got their $50,000. They probably spent it within a year. I got something far more valuable. Proof that I'd been loved by a man who knew my worth. Even if his children never would die, and in the end, that was the inheritance that actually mattered.